Before we venture any further, I must offer you a word of caution. The path we are about to tread winds through deeply mature and, at times, unsettling terrain. This story does not shy away from the rawness of real life. It lays bare the profound, often overwhelming complexities of new motherhood. The sleepless nights, the aching heart, the fragile bond forming in the quiet hours before dawn. It peers into the delicate, tangled web of family dynamics, where love and resentment so often coexist, threading themselves invisibly through our every interaction. And it confronts, unflinchingly, the devastation and betrayal of infidelity, the silent shattering of trust that leaves wounds invisible to the eye but agonizingly raw to the soul. If any of these themes stir unease or pain within you, it would be wise, perhaps even merciful, to turn away now. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. Each of your shares is not only a motivation for us but also contributes to spreading value to the community. If you find this content useful, don't forget to watch the whole video, like, subscribe, and share with someone you think needs to hear this too. It was in the muted stillness of that morning that I found myself adrift in the kitchen, my hand absent-mindedly tracing the smooth, cold surface of the granite countertop. The soft hum of the refrigerator vibrated through the air, louder and more intrusive than it had any right to be, cutting through the fragile silence like a warning bell. The house, our so-called sanctuary, seemed to hold its breath, heavy with the unspoken memories of all we had endured to arrive here. Every step we had taken, every tear shed, every harsh word spoken in anger and later regretted, had led to this singular moment where, for the first time in what felt like forever, life seemed precariously poised between despair and hope. In that breathless pause I felt it, a flicker of something close to peace, tentative and trembling, as though it might shatter under the weight of my next exhale. And yet, despite the aching uncertainty, a part of me yearned to believe that maybe, just maybe, we had finally found a fragile kind of balance. For what felt like an eternity, the very idea of study, of structured learning, of aspirations beyond mere survival, was nothing more than a distant mirage in my life. The reality was far humbler, far harsher. It was simply Noah and me, two souls bound tightly together, navigating the suffocating walls of a series of cramped, dimly lit apartments where every penny was stretched until it frayed and snapped. I carry with me vivid, aching memories of countless nights spent hunched over a battered, sagging couch, my fingers absent-mindedly tracing the edges of unopened, unpaid bills. My gaze would linger on them far too long, as if staring hard enough could somehow make them disappear. I remember praying in silence that Noah wouldn't notice the terror that rooted me to that spot, that he wouldn't see the desperation clawing at my heart. But he always did. He always saw. Even from his earliest days, Noah possessed an uncanny, almost unsettling gift. He could read the truth etched across my soul with nothing more than a glance. He would quietly crawl into my lap, tuck his small, warm body against mine, and wind his arms around me in an embrace that spoke louder than any words. In those moments, his voice, soft and certain, would whisper promises that everything would be okay. And somehow, against all reason, against all odds, it always was. His faith in us, in me, became the anchor I didn't know I so desperately needed. Noah's father had once been a close companion, a familiar shadow from a past that now felt like a half-remembered dream. When he died, there were no loud arguments, no bitter farewells, no scenes carved in drama and regret. Instead, he simply faded from our lives, slipping away without resistance, like smoke dissolving into the cold night air, leaving behind nothing but the hollow echo of what might have been. I often found myself wondering in the stillness of those long nights whether traces of him would surface in Noah as he grew older. A certain hardness in his gaze, a restless spirit itching to abandon, to vanish. But Noah, steadfast and luminous, was entirely his own. He bore none of the coldness, none of the silent retreat. He stayed. Through every storm, through every quiet collapse, Noah remained. My quiet, enduring constant in a world that too often threatened to unravel around us. We lingered in those tender golden days, suspended in a fragile world that seemed both boundless and impossibly small. Our surroundings were humble, four thin walls that barely held our lives inside, and within that close, shared space, secrets became an impossibility. The walls themselves seemed to listen, to murmur our truths back to us, until we surrendered entirely to openness. We abandoned the pretense of privacy, letting conversation flow freely, without reservation or fear. Our talks drifted from the trivial to the profound, touching on every awkward, delicate subject with an honesty so rare it sometimes made my heart ache. I answered every question he dared to ask, no matter how uncomfortable, and in turn, he entrusted me with confessions most children might guard jealously from their parents. It wasn't something we consciously chose. It was simply the natural way of things, as inevitable as the tides. We leaned on each other with a quiet, instinctive trust, building a bond woven from thousands of small, sacred moments, a bond one believes even now has endured the relentless passing of time. As Noah grew, it astonished me. Not just the way he physically expanded, filling spaces that once dwarfed him, but the way his spirit seemed to grow even larger, richer, more intricate. And yet, through it all, I never felt the sting of losing him. While others watched their sons drift into rebellion and distance, I watched mine choose to stay. While his friends fell into mischief, chasing trouble and testing boundaries, Noah gravitated back to me, choosing the comfort of shared jokes, late-night talks, and the easy, familiar companionship we had always known. His humor, often terrible, sometimes downright absurd, never failed to pull laughter from the deepest parts of me, laughter that felt pure and real in a way few things ever did. His presence was a balm, a constant, glowing warmth in a world that could often feel so cold and uncertain. And yet, if I am honest, there were times it felt like too much. A life so tightly entwined with another's, so deeply rooted in caretaking and constancy, that it sometimes threatened to smother parts of me I had long neglected. Perhaps that was why I turned to fitness with a fervor that went beyond vanity or appearance. It was never just about sculpting my body. It was about reclaiming a sense of strength, a fierce, unshakable resilience that had been worn thin by years of quiet sacrifices. Every morning became a sacred ritual. The pounding of my feet against the earth as I ran, the strain and burn of lifting weights, the breathless triumph of pushing myself just a little further. I began to care for myself, not out of obligation, but out of a deep, rediscovered reverence for who I was, and for the life still ahead of me. And it worked. Slowly but surely I felt the change stirring inside me. My body grew stronger, yes, and my reflection softened into something I could meet without shame. But it was more than that. People began to notice the difference, and in their eyes, I caught glimpses of a woman who was not just surviving but thriving. Confidence, wild, exhilarating, and unfamiliar, began to pulse through my veins. It awakened something long dormant within me. A hunger not just to endure, but to live, to want, to reach out for something beyond the safety of survival. I had finally acquired this house. A home that breathed space into my lungs, bathed every corner in golden light, and cradled me in a serenity I had spent years only dreaming of. It wasn't just a place to live. It was a testament to everything I had endured, everything I had fought for in the quiet, unseen battles of everyday life. I made a solemn vow to myself the day I signed the papers. I would not allow guilt to sink its claws into me. I would not diminish this victory by telling myself it was too much, or that I didn't deserve it. I had earned every last square foot. And more importantly, Noah had earned it too. The safe, warm space where he could stretch out and breathe without fear of lack or loss. Not long after settling in, I made another decision. A far less practical, but deeply symbolic one. I bought a hot tub. At first, the idea felt almost ridiculous, even self-indulgent. It seemed absurd to pour so much money into something that served no purpose but pleasure, no function but relaxation. But after the years of scraping by, of denying myself even the simplest comforts, it felt almost revolutionary. Necessary. A declaration that survival was no longer enough. That I deserved to feel good, to live with a sense of abundance. Before placing the order, I told Noah about it, half expecting him to roll his eyes at my extravagance. Instead, he simply smiled, that small, knowing smile of his, and told me I should go for it, that I should enjoy something just for myself. His reaction was casual, almost detached, but for me it stirred something much deeper. I clung to that moment more tightly than I wanted to admit. The first night it arrived, I slipped into the steaming water and stayed there until the stars blurred overhead and my fingertips puckered into prunes. It was more than relaxation. It was a visceral, undeniable marker of how far we had come. As the heat embraced me and the night wrapped its arms around my shoulders, I felt a rare, almost disbelieving sense of peace settle deep into my bones. This, I thought, was the evidence I had been seeking, proof that I had finally, against all odds, arrived at a life worth savoring. As the weekend drew near, my excitement to share this small piece of joy with Noah became almost unbearable. I dropped hints, playful and persistent, about how good it felt, how it would help ease his sore muscles after his long, grueling workouts. He just chuckled and shook his head, insisting it wasn't really his thing, that he probably wouldn't get much use out of it. But still, some stubborn, hopeful part of me pressed on, and after dinner that Saturday night, when I suggested it one more time, he finally, with a mock groan of defeat, agreed. That should have been the end of it. It was supposed to be simple, innocent, just a mother and son unwinding after the long, chaotic days that had shaped our lives. Yet, as I went to retrieve my swimsuit, a strange stillness came over me. I found myself hesitating, my fingers lingering over the fabric. It wasn't hesitation out of modesty or uncertainty about what to wear. It was something much deeper. It was the sudden, jarring realization of how long it had been since I had allowed myself to feel good in my own skin, to inhabit my body with something other than shame or fatigue. There was no right or wrong in it. No judgment. Only a raw, startling awareness that something inside me had shifted. I was not the same woman who once cowered from her own reflection. I was someone new, someone different, someone learning slowly and imperfectly to exist not in survival, but in sensation, in presence, in unapologetic being. I lingered longer than usual before the mirror, caught in a rare, unguarded moment of self-examination. My fingers fidgeted with the straps of my swimsuit, adjusting them with a precision that betrayed my nerves, before smoothing my hair in soft, deliberate strokes. I told myself it was nothing, just excitement over the novelty of the hot tub, a harmless eagerness for a small indulgence earned through years of sacrifice. It was foolish, I insisted inwardly, to let my mind wander to any place more complicated than that. And yet, as I gathered our drinks in trembling hands, the quiver in my fingertips belied my calm exterior, betraying the tangled emotions churning just beneath the surface. The night had draped itself around us like a warm, silken shawl, unusually balmy for the season, with only a whisper of a breeze stirring the heavy air. I stepped carefully across the deck, balancing two delicate glasses with the caution of someone carrying far more than just liquid, as though the weight of the moment itself demanded reverence. I placed them gently on the wide, cool rim of the hot tub, savoring the small, deliberate act. Noah was already there, lounging back against the smooth curve of the tub's interior, the water lapping lazily at his shoulders. He looked so at ease, so content, it almost caught me off guard, a softness I hadn't seen in him for what felt like an eternity. His head tilted back slightly, his expression open and unguarded, the tension that so often clung to him now melted away by the warmth of the water and the gentle cloak of night. "I told you it would be wonderful," I said with a small, playful smile as I slid into the water, the heat wrapping around my body like an embrace. Steam rose up around us in ghostly tendrils, blurring the edges of the world, making everything feel dreamlike, suspended. For the briefest moment, his eyes flicked upward, meeting mine before darting back down to the shimmering surface. I pretended not to notice, letting my toes flirt with the water's edge before fully immersing myself. "I have to admit, it's better than I expected," he said, swirling his drink with a lazy, almost boyish gesture. "Although I claim this spot. The jets are perfectly placed." "Oh, is that so?" I teased, slipping deeper into the water until it kissed the line of my collarbone. "Don't get too comfortable though. This domain belongs to me, and I fully intend to reclaim it." "You snooze, you lose," he quipped, flashing me a grin that was all mischief and light. I let out a theatrical sigh, but a genuine smile unfurled across my lips before I could stop it. It had been so long since we had slipped so effortlessly into this kind of ease, where the world outside fell away and it was just the two of us, sharing laughter, teasing words, and something more sacred still, a sense of belonging. It tugged at memories buried deep within me, of evenings spent curled up together on our battered old couch, the glow of the television painting our faces in soft, flickering light. I remembered how he would always inch closer, nudging me with cold toes until I would finally relent and let him stretch out, his head lolling into my lap, his presence filling every empty, aching space inside me. And now, here we were again, older, changed, yet somehow still tethered by the same invisible threads. As the water pulsed gently against my skin and the stars blinked lazily overhead, I allowed myself to drift into that sweetness, to gather it close against the loneliness I sometimes dared not name. For tonight at least we were still ours. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, the only thing that felt different. Maybe it was the oppressive warmth that clung to our skin, or the way the water's embrace slowed every movement until it felt thick and deliberate, like drifting through a heavy dream. Or maybe it was the way Noah's body seemed to occupy the space with such effortless command, his broad shoulders stretching against the boundaries of the tub as though he had outgrown it, as though the very air had to make room for him. "Very well," I said, my voice light but my heart pounding just beneath the surface. "If you're going to plant yourself there like royalty, then at least allow me to experience for myself whatever makes that spot so extraordinary." I shifted closer, the warm water parting reluctantly around me as I made my way across the bubbling expanse. The short distance between us felt oddly charged, magnified by the hypnotic churn of the jets and the closeness of the night. As we traded places, a sudden wave of regret crashed over me. The moment my body settled into the spot he had vacated, I understood instantly what I had surrendered to my own boldness. The jets struck all the right places with uncanny precision, the small of my back, the tight knots along my shoulders, the weary ache in my calves, unraveling tension I hadn't even realized I was carrying. A low, unbidden sigh of relief escaped my lips, and before I could mask it, I caught the look he shot me out of the corner of my eye, a glance filled with wry amusement and unmistakable knowing. He knew exactly what he had given up. He knew exactly how good it felt. For a moment, our eyes locked in silent understanding, a flash of shared mischief that flickered between us like a spark leaping between kindling. The world beyond the water, beyond this small shared universe, faded into insignificance. It was just us, adrift in warmth and half-smiles, where every ripple seemed to carry some unspoken conversation just beneath the surface. And even as I reclined deeper into the embrace of the jets, letting the sensation soak into my bones, I couldn't help but feel the tender pull of memory, of all the countless wordless ways we had leaned on each other over the years. This was different, yes, but in a way that didn't frighten me. In a way that simply was heavy, golden, and impossibly sweet. "I warned you," he said with a smirk, lifting his glass to his lips for another slow, savoring sip. "This territory is no longer yours to reclaim. Care to make it interesting?" I countered, my voice light, teasing, as I leaned in with a mischievous glint in my eye. I made a half-hearted grab for his arm, my fingers brushing his skin, but he was quicker, pulling away just in time, laughter bursting from him, rich and unguarded. In a heartbeat, we tumbled into a clumsy, joyful struggle, the water sloshing violently over the edges of the tub as I lunged again, only for him to bat my hands away with effortless playfulness. The air filled with the sounds of splashing and stifled laughter, an echo of simpler times when happiness had been so much easier to touch. "Very well," he relented finally, raising his drink high above his head as though it were a delicate prize needing protection. "You win. Claim your seat and your victory." Flushed with triumph, I obeyed without hesitation, sliding into place beside him, closer than I had intended, our bodies separated only by a scant few inches of water and heat. The laughter faded, replaced by a silence that was not awkward, but thick with something else, something heavier, unnamed. A shiver, invisible yet undeniable, passed between us. My heart skipped in my chest, stumbling over itself, but I remained perfectly still, forcing my breathing into slow, careful rhythm. He didn't move either. The warmth of the water, the shimmer of droplets clinging to our skin, the faint scent of his soap mingling with the night air. It wrapped around us like a second atmosphere, dense and impossibly intimate. I told myself it was nothing, just the heat, just the nearness, just the heavy, humid pull of the evening. But deep down, another truth was pressing in, uninvited and insistent, blooming quietly beneath the surface of my thoughts. I shifted slightly, trying to recapture a sense of easy comfort, but every small movement only heightened my awareness. The accidental brush of a knee, the way our arms almost touched but didn't, the invisible thread that seemed to hum between us, alive and trembling. The thrum of my heartbeat roared in my ears, louder than the bubbling jets, louder than the whisper of the wind. I told myself not to make anything of it. I told myself it was fleeting, harmless. But with every passing second, as the night deepened around us and the stars wheeled overhead, it became harder and harder to believe the lies I had always been so good at telling myself. Something had shifted between us, and there would be no pretending otherwise for much longer. "Apologies," he said. His voice unexpected, barely above a whisper, thick with uncertainty. The words came out so quietly, as though he was afraid to disturb the fragile silence between us, his tone betraying an almost palpable discomfort. "I didn't mean to do that." I quickly cut him off, trying to sound casual, as if the moment meant nothing at all. "It's perfectly fine," I replied, striving to keep my voice even, controlled, even as my heart began to flutter erratically. "It's just the jets. They have a way of making things feel more intense." My attempt at nonchalance was weak, and even I could feel the edges of my own voice betray me. But he didn't seem convinced. His face flushed a deep shade of red, his discomfort practically radiating from him. He avoided my eyes, his gaze shifting uncomfortably away, as if the very act of meeting my eyes might unravel something inside him, or perhaps something inside both of us. A flicker of guilt surged through me, a wave of self-consciousness that I quickly tried to suppress. But deeper beneath that initial wave was something else entirely, an electric hum of anticipation that I couldn't quite shake. It was as if something unsaid, something unacknowledged, was floating between us, too tangible to ignore. The way he looked at me, his eyes filled with hesitation, uncertainty, and a trace of something else, held me captive. It was a look I wasn't sure I had ever seen before, as if in that moment something in him had unraveled, revealing a vulnerability I hadn't expected. And it stirred something in me, something I didn't fully understand but knew, in the depths of my being, that I couldn't turn away from. It was as if I'd awakened something in him, or perhaps something in me, a strength, a quiet, hidden power that had remained dormant until this exact moment. "You know," I said suddenly, breaking the charged silence between us, my voice louder than I intended. "This whole thing wouldn't have happened if you'd just given me my seat back." His chuckle broke the tension slightly, but it didn't erase the subtle, persistent strain that still lingered between us, like a thread that couldn't quite be severed. He shifted away from me, his movements careful, as if he didn't want to disturb the fragile balance we were teetering on. "I suppose that's fair," he muttered, his words trailing off as he stood, his hand brushing the edge of the tub. "I think I'll go grab another drink," he added, almost as if it were an excuse, a way to give himself a moment to collect his thoughts, to put some space between us. I watched him leave, my gaze lingering longer than it should have, the familiar feeling of longing mixed with a strange uncertainty swirling in my chest. My eyes followed him as he stepped out of the water, his body moving in that effortless way that always seemed to captivate me. But now it was different. Now, I wasn't sure how to interpret the moment that had just passed between us. As he disappeared into the shadows, I exhaled slowly, a breath heavy with unspoken questions. What had just happened? What was this pull, this quiet shift between us that I couldn't seem to name? It unsettled me more than I cared to admit. My thoughts raced in circles, seeking answers, but finding only a growing, unexplained desire to understand him, to understand me, to understand what was happening in this space, in this shared silence. And yet, the more I tried to grasp it, the more elusive it became. I leaned back against the precipice, the weight of the world pressing down on me yet somehow lifting at the same time. My body hummed with a restless energy, a pulsing undercurrent that refused to be ignored. It was a sensation that both intrigued and terrified me. Was it innocent? Or was there something darker lurking within it? No matter how much I tried to push it aside, that feeling clung to me, occupying my thoughts with relentless persistence. That moment, so fleeting, had unsettled me in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. His wide, unblinking eyes mirrored my own confusion, an expression that held no passion, no desire, but instead an undeniable fear, an unspoken fear of something unnamed, something undefined taking root between us. The tension in the air had been thick, as if something fragile was on the verge of breaking, yet we both stood there, paralyzed by its weight. When he finally stepped into the light, the moment slipped away like sand through my fingers, but its shadow stayed with me, hovering in the corners of my mind, impossible to shake. I found myself revisiting it again and again, turning it over in my mind as though it held the answers to something I couldn't yet understand. I questioned its meaning, unsure whether I was reading too much into it, trying to convince myself it was just a moment of harmless warmth, or if, in truth, there was something more, a deeper, unspoken significance I had failed to grasp in the moment. Was it as innocent as I had desperately tried to believe, or did it carry a weight that was impossible to ignore? I want to express my gratitude to you for walking this journey with me thus far. I realize that the path we've tread together has not been the easiest to follow, and for your willingness to listen, I am truly thankful. Your presence means more to me than I can put into words, and if this video resonates with you, if you feel the stirrings of something familiar in the stories shared here, I humbly ask that you consider liking and subscribing. It's your support that fuels my desire to continue sharing these raw, unfiltered moments, reminding me that I am not walking this path alone. But for now, let us return to the task at hand. I tried to convince myself that it was trivial, just an odd, passing moment. Warm drinks, shared laughter, the soft hum of the world outside, and the tight, intimate space we found ourselves in. It was nothing more than that, I told myself. Nothing more than a fleeting instant that would soon be forgotten. Yet, even as I whispered those words to myself, a part of me knew that I couldn't simply move on. The echoes of that moment, and the questions it raised, would remain with me, unanswered and unresolved. As dawn broke and the soft light filtered through the window, I awoke with a restless flutter in my chest, the events of the previous day still swirling in my mind like an unruly storm. His gaze, intense and lingering, flashed back through my thoughts. It wasn't just the fleeting look that stayed with me. It was the complexity of it. The mix of nerves, embarrassment, and the faintest whisper of something more, something deeper, something that neither of us dared to fully acknowledge. I couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the surface, something was shifting. In that fragile moment, I was overwhelmed by a rush of emotions that left me both exhilarated and vulnerable. A delicate mixture of giddiness, flattery, and an insatiable curiosity washed over me, each sensation more intoxicating than the last. The thought of teasing him, of drawing out those moments of uncertainty and tension, had never once crossed my mind before, not in a million years. But now, with every passing second, the idea lingered, seductive and tantalizing, whispering in my ear, urging me to indulge. It all started so subtly. One morning, as I prepared breakfast in the soft quiet of the house, I found myself clad in nothing more than a loose tank top, the fabric barely clinging to my skin, and no bra to speak of. It was an unintentional act of liberation, a simple moment of comfort, but I could feel his eyes on me. He didn't say a word, but his gaze, sharp, intense, filled with something I couldn't quite decipher, spoke volumes. The look was so subtle, yet so potent, that it made my heart skip a beat. I couldn't tell if it was truly there, or if I was merely projecting my own thoughts and desires onto him. Was this real, or was it just my pulse racing and my mind playing tricks? I felt both self-conscious and empowered in the same breath, like I was standing on the edge of something fragile. The thrill of it all was undeniable, and soon it became part of my routine. The sweatpants I once wore habitually were replaced with leggings that hugged my legs tighter, and the hoodies that had always been my go-to were swapped for low-cut tops that revealed just enough to leave his eyes lingering longer than usual. I began to lean down more frequently, stretching just a bit longer, letting my body move in ways that I knew would capture his attention. It wasn't intentional at first, but as each day passed, I found myself positioning myself a little closer to him, letting our paths cross with just a touch more proximity than necessary. Each time our hands brushed or our eyes met, I felt a charge, a spark that seemed to vibrate through the air, leaving me breathless and wanting more. And yet, despite all the unspoken tension, I tried to convince myself that none of it meant anything. It was just a game, an innocent, playful flirtation, nothing more. There was no danger in it, I reassured myself. No harm in indulging this strange, intoxicating dance between us. But with each passing moment, with each subtle gesture, my feelings deepened. What had started as a fleeting curiosity was now something more, something I couldn't ignore. As Christmas approached, I felt an undeniable shift in the air. The atmosphere around us grew thick with unspoken desires, crackling with anticipation. It wasn't just about the clothes, the lingering glances, or the soft touches anymore. It had become something far more potent, more electric. Every word we spoke, every glance we exchanged, felt loaded with a weight that neither of us could fully comprehend, but both of us could feel. And somewhere deep within me, I realized that we were no longer just playing a game. The stakes had risen, and there was no turning back now. The humor was what captivated me. His playful banter in return, testing the limits to discover how far I would allow it to unfold. "Careful, Mom," he said one night as I leaned over the couch in my leggings and tank top. "You are about to bring joy to someone's day." "Oh, please," I retorted, rolling my eyes. One might assume that after 2 decades, familiarity would have settled uncomfortably between us. It doesn't imply that I lack vision. That brought me to a halt. He uttered it with such nonchalance, as if it were nothing of consequence, yet it was. A wave of unease washed over me, and I averted my gaze before he could catch a glimpse of my expression. Once more, the hot tub was a topic of conversation following dinner one evening. This time the question didn't even need to be posed. Before I could utter a single word, he swiftly gathered the drinks and towels. I chose a pink bikini, more daring than the one I donned previously, and stood waiting for him outside. As he entered, his gaze darted downward for just a fleeting moment, yet it was sufficient to bring a smile to my face. "Whoa, are you sure that swimsuit's safe?" he joked, trying to keep it light. I laughed, but something about the comment stayed with me longer than it should have. "Oh, cease this," I chuckled as I submerged into the water. "I would never wish to cause you any distress. Trust me, it would be far more traumatic for you." The words lingered in the air, more substantial than the vapor ascending from the surface of the water. Neither of us made a move to push, yet the tension throbbed in the space that separated us. I made a light-hearted comment about changing seats once more, but he quickly dismissed the idea. "Absolutely not," he exclaimed. "Not again. Not after what happened last time." "What transpired during our last encounter?" I leaned in, tilting my head. He mentioned that his face was turning red. A miniature version of myself had chosen to partake in the festivities. I found myself laughing, perhaps a touch excessively. "I appreciate the compliment." His face flushed an even deeper shade of crimson, and I chose to let the matter rest. Yet as he emerged and I caught sight of him through his damp shorts, that familiar thrill surged within me once more. Following Christmas, I discovered yet another reason to delay matters. A sauna I had chosen as a present for my own enjoyment. Noah volunteered to handle the setup, and I ensured I remained nearby as he went about his task. I leaned against the doorway, clad in a crop top and shorts, observing him as he meticulously tightened the screws. "Oh, Mr. Handyman," I murmured, trailing my fingers down his arm. "How shall I ever repay you?" He chuckled dismissively, yet I caught the fleeting glance of his eyes trailing down to my legs before he redirected his attention to the instructions. I allowed it to linger in the air for a moment before retreating. Upon completing the construction the following day, I inquired if he wished to test it out alongside me. He paused for a moment, but then I urged him, Come on, you created this, you should at least take pleasure in it. That did the job. I donned a pair of shorts and a tank top, embracing the freedom of going braless, merely sufficient to sustain the momentum of the game. He arrived in gym shorts, shirtless, embodying a man rather than the boy I once raised. We nestled into the sauna, our legs grazing against each other, and I could feel my heart quicken. I leaned back and remarked, "You've done such an excellent job in here. Are you certain there's nothing further I can offer?" With a grin he remarked, "I do have a significant problem that you could help me with." I blinked, momentarily taken aback, but before I could utter a word he dismissed it with a wave of his hand. "I was just joking, of course." "Ah, I assumed our guest had returned," I playfully remarked, casting a glance at his shorts. His gaze darted to my chest for just a fleeting moment, yet it was enough to send a shiver across my skin. "It seems you're not alone in hosting guests," he retorted, his gaze lingering on the outline of my nipples against the delicate material. I stood tall, trying to mask the flutter of nerves with a casual smile, though I wasn't sure who I was performing for, him or myself. "It's a common occurrence following a workout," I said. The timer chimed, shattering the stillness of the moment. He rose first, and I trailed behind, our bodies brushing together as we exited. He remained in place. "Perhaps I'll join you for a workout next time," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "I would cherish that," I responded, yet the words seemed to carry a weight far beyond their intent. That night I lay in bed, a sense of restlessness enveloping me. A part of me yearned to halt, to draw a line and retreat to the familiar, yet another part craved the thrill of pushing boundaries, eager to discover just how far I could go before something inevitably broke. I never intended to mention it, certainly not in the manner it unfolded. Yet after all that had transpired, the playful jabs, the stolen moments, the lingering glances, I found it impossible to overlook, and he felt the same way. Now it's playing tricks on my mind. Half the time I find myself yearning to escape the confines of this room, desperate to silence the thoughts of you, and in the other half I am ensnared by your memory. His voice faded, yet I understood his meaning perfectly. My skin felt aflame, and my heart raced with such intensity that I was convinced he could hear its frantic rhythm. I ought to have said something to put an end to it, to acknowledge that we couldn't continue down this path. Yet I remained silent. "Frightens me as well," I replied, yet it also. Fear gripped me as I hesitated, reluctant to complete the thought. Yet I knew I couldn't deceive him or myself. I confess that it makes me feel truly alive. The silence enveloped us, and for a fleeting moment, neither of us uttered a sound. Noah reclined, allowing his head to rest against the couch. "Mother of divine grace," he ran his hands down his face, then turned his gaze back to me. "What on earth are we doing?" "I'm not quite sure," I admitted truthfully, "yet I have no desire to halt." He gazed at me as if he were on a quest for something, perhaps permission or a hint of reassurance that he wasn't losing his mind. But all I could offer him was the unvarnished truth. We can't pretend to dance around this forever. If something ever feels too close to the edge, we'll stop and say so. No games, no confusion. He nodded, yet the turmoil in his eyes was unmistakable. And if I were to be truthful, I felt it as well. Uncertainty loomed over how much longer we could maintain the facade of mere teasing, yet for the moment, this was what I craved. I craved the way his gaze met mine, the way he stirred emotions within me. "I should go to bed," he said suddenly, standing up and running a hand through his hair. "Indeed," I spoke, yet neither of us made a move. He hesitated for a fleeting moment, as if anticipating my intervention. Yet I remained silent. When he finally turned and walked away, I was left in solitude, grappling with my thoughts, questioning whether what we had was already beyond repair. The night passed in restless wakefulness. I tossed and turned, replaying the conversation repeatedly until its edges began to blur into a haze of uncertainty. A sense of relief washed over me, as if a great weight had been lifted now that all was laid bare. Yet another part of me felt burdened more than ever before. I had traversed a boundary, albeit one constructed solely in my mind, and I found myself at a loss for how to return to the other side. The following morning, I discovered Noah in the kitchen. He stood at the counter, already dressed, cradling a cup of coffee in his hands. He glanced up as I entered, and for a fleeting moment, silence enveloped us, yet there was an absence of tension, a stark contrast to the night prior. Silence prevails. "Morning," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Good morning." I reached for a mug, carefully filling it while striving to maintain a steady hand. I sensed his gaze upon me, causing my heart to race. Yet this time I maintained my composure. "This time it shall not be so." He began to speak about last night, but I interrupted him. "It is essential that we have a conversation." I turned to face him, setting my cup down. "Yet we must also embrace honesty with ourselves." He nodded, yet there was a flicker of anxiety in his expression, as if he were uncertain about what words might escape my lips. To be honest, I found myself uncertain as well. Yet deep down, I understood that we could no longer maintain the facade that nothing was unfolding. It was evident beyond doubt. "I cannot bear the thought of losing you," I declared, "regardless of the circumstances." "You won't," he said quickly, stepping closer. "I truly swear. Yet we cannot continue down this path, whatever it may be." My voice trembled, yet I persevered. "It's affecting us both, and I refuse to allow it to reach a stage from which we cannot return." "What shall we do next?" he inquired, his voice trembling slightly, stirring a pang of sorrow within me. "We establish limits. Genuine ones, without a doubt." I swallowed hard, compelling myself to maintain eye contact. "Cease all contact. Cease the playful jest. If either of us begins to sense that we are approaching a boundary, we will speak up." "Very well. No dismissing it." He nodded slowly, yet the hesitation in his eyes was unmistakable. He was reluctant to release whatever it was that bound us together, yet a part of me felt the same way. Yet I was aware that it was necessary for us to proceed and pursue. I extended my hand, enveloping his with a tender squeeze. "I want you to understand that this is unrelated to my feelings for you. Your presence ignites a spark within me." I noted that moment would forever remain etched in my memory. Yet this cannot be the path through which I rediscover that sensation once more. I must uncover what eludes me beyond the confines of this home, beyond our confines. His shoulders eased ever so slightly. At long last, after days of absence, I beheld the boy I had nurtured, the individual who placed their trust in me, rested against me, and gazed up at me, not the man who had been gazing at me as if I were a stranger. "I understand," he said, squeezing my hand in return. "My sentiments align perfectly with yours." I found myself at a loss for words. "We will be all right," I declared, and I truly believed it. However, it is essential that we ensure it remains in that state. He enveloped me in a hug, warm and reassuring, as if we had shared this embrace countless times before, as with all those that came before. Yet as he withdrew, an unmistakable shift lingered in the air, more buoyant. It felt as though we had finally released the tension that had bound us for weeks. Afterward, he departed to join some friends. I positioned myself before the mirror and took a moment to truly observe my reflection. Not solely at my body, but at all that surrounds it. The gentle warmth in my gaze, the manner in which my hair cascaded around my shoulders, the radiance of my skin, effortlessly luminous even in its natural state. After many years, I finally experienced a sense of beauty within myself. Highly sought after, it had nothing to do with Noah. Not quite. It was due to his ability to evoke the sensation of being seen. I vowed to myself in that moment that I would not allow that sensation to slip away. I would discover methods to sustain its vitality through fresh encounters, intriguing individuals, and perhaps even a budding romance when the time felt right. Yet it would not be by his hand. It was impossible. When Noah returned home later that night, we seamlessly slipped back into our familiar rhythm. dinner, television, and easy conversation. For the first time, it felt effortless once more. Cozy, as if we had rediscovered the path that led us to one another, even if we had sacrificed something in our journey. As I reclined in bed that night, a myriad of thoughts swirled in my mind, each one echoing the question, what if? What if we allowed it to unfold even more? What if we had ventured beyond that boundary? What if the part of me that yearned for knowledge lingered on, never truly fading into the background? Uncertainty clouds my path, yet I am acutely aware of the intricate nature of my situation. This is the reason I feel compelled to share this. Perhaps there exists an individual who possesses a perspective I have yet to consider. If you have encountered a situation akin to this, or are aware of someone who has, I would genuinely appreciate your insights. At times, clarity eludes us when we find ourselves entrenched in the thick of it. Let this serve as a poignant reminder. Loneliness has a way of leading you to unexpected destinations. Exercise caution before you tread upon a boundary from which there is no return. I appreciate your willingness to lend an ear. Your insights are valuable, so don't hesitate to express them. Thank you for staying with us. If you find it interesting and useful, please subscribe, like, and share so you don't miss the next video. Thanks.